Winter is coming. Some project management lessons from the HBO TV series Game of Thrones.
Sirio says every hurt is a lesson, and every lesson makes you better.
Every hurt is a lesson, and every lesson makes you better, says Sirio Farrell in one of the episodes of the first series. And project managers can get pretty bruised by the lessons that our projects throw at us. But we deserve a little time off too, and if you're like me, you probably spend some of it in Westeros. And that's good, because we can learn an awful lot about project management from the Game of Thrones and from the world that George R.R. Martin has created. Whilst I have read some of the books, I'm going to try to keep my comments to information that you can get from watching a TV series, and I plan to group my lessons into 3 main sections. First, we'll start with the general principles that we can learn from the Game of Thrones storyline. Secondly, each of the great houses of Westeros has its own words, and we'll look at the lessons that are buried in some of those words. And finally, many of the characters have been given memorable quotes, and we'll look at some of the insights we can draw from the words of some of my favourite characters. But a word of warning. Spoilers ahead. If you're not completely up to date with the series of shows or of the books, you may learn something that you don't want to know. So proceed with caution. So let's start with some general principles that we can learn from the Game of Thrones storyline. I suppose we could argue for a long time about what the story of the Game of Thrones and the novel series it's based on, The Song of Ice and Fire, what it's really all about. But somewhere near its core is warring and rivalry among major factions of important people. It's set in a deep historical and mythical landscape, and as with all novels, the events take place at a critical point in the timeline of this fictional world of Westeros. And the first thing I notice is that nothing gets built when everyone's at war, because in our story, Westeros is a feudal society ruled by lords and lordlings. Everything takes second place to their dynastic ambitions for power. So the only major projects we can see are military in nature. A big wall and big castles. So lesson 1 is that innovative projects cannot thrive when your organisation is in turmoil. The next lesson I draw from our storyline is that if you want to do something remarkable, you need to build strong alliances. One of the characters at the centre of our storyline is Jon Snow. He wants to defeat a supernatural army. And another is Daenerys Targaryen, who wants to break the wheel that has perpetuated the feudal system that I've already mentioned. To do this, Jon Snow has built an alliance of northern lords, wildlings, Vale Knights, and now Daenerys Targaryen and her forces. Meanwhile, Daenerys herself, the breaker of chains, has a former slave army at her disposal, a nomadic horde, and Westerosi nobles, including Tyrion Lannister, the second son of a major family. And maybe, in our story, she'll ally with Dawn as well. So, lesson 2 is that audacious projects need diverse stakeholders to be fully aligned and collaborating. The next thing I'd like to highlight is that the North remembers.
The North remembers.
The North remembers.
It's by no means clear what the North remembers, and nor what this has to do with the Royce family words, "we remember." But one candidate is the part that the Stark family played in defeating the Long Night, and their role in constantly defending the North and its people. So my third lesson is this: stakeholders have a long memory when it comes to trust, one way or another. Prophecies abound, but interpretations are legion. The story of A Game of Thrones is filled with prophecy and magic, but the characters make multiple interpretations of each of these prophecies, and so do the fans. What the author tells us clearly is that prophecy is fickle. You can't read it like a balance sheet. Interpreting prophecy is fraught with dangers. So my fourth lesson is that you can identify the risks, but you need to prepare for multiple outcomes. The last of my general principles comes from my observation that the Night's Watch is depleted and much of the wall is unguarded during the time when our story is set. It seems that thousands of years of complacency have led to the situation at the start of our story. It seems that maybe the North has forgotten. Now look at the mess they're in. So lesson 5 is simple. Take nothing for granted. Remain vigilant. And if you have some general principles or lessons that you can draw from the story of Game of Thrones, do put them in the comments below, and I'll look forward to responding to them. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to bringing you more project management content.